This is The Weekly Set, the official podcast of TheTotalScreen.com. Episode 187, recorded December 16th, 2018. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Weekly Set, the official podcast of The Total Screen. I am your host. My name is Tyson. Joining me today, as always, is my partner in crime here at The Total Screen, Will.
Hello.
And we have our special guest, Alex, who's joined us a few times before.
Hello.
So, today we are going to be talking about Castlevania Season 2, which hit Netflix in October. We're going to be going over the whole second season of Castlevania and kind of just talking about our impressions of it and everything, as we usually do. So, I was just saying before we started, I thought that the first half of the season was a bit slow. It was just kind of a lot of machinations in place. They kind of brought in Carmilla and immediately she was the schemer that was going to cause trouble and stuff. It was just right off the bat.
Right, yeah.
And that seemed to be she seemed to be the star of the first half of the season. It was just kind of her going around scheming, trying to dig up something on Hector.
Yeah. She was trying to, she was scheming. She was trying to undermine Dracula and take control.
Yeah, she's trying to manipulate Hector,
yep.
And she ended up, I think it was in the third or fourth episode of the season where she ended up killing off Godbrand, who is the character voiced by Peter Stormare from American Gods. He's been in
No. Isaac killed.
Yeah.
Godbrand.
Oh yeah, it was Isaac.
She convinced Godbrand to go along with her plans, and then Godbrand mouthed off to Isaac about and gave himself away, and then Isaac being the only person in that whole place fiercely loyal to Dracula, killed him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. I got that wrong. I'd completely forgotten about
the
circumstances of Godbrand's death.
Yeah, it's perfectly understandable. The whole thing was not that interesting. The whole scheming part of the show.
Yeah.
So, who did what? Doesn't really matter. I just want to see Dracula do some cool stuff.
I'll see Dracula and Trevor and Alucard battle it out, which he got in the end. So the scheme, it feels to me it feels like the first half of the season was set up for next season, because it seems like all this scheming stuff, all this stuff with Camilla and Hector and Isaac is next season's main story. And so it feels to me in trying to set up the story and events for next season, the main story for this season, the story of Trevor and Ali, kind of took a backseat to that.
Which is funny because that means that only 3 of the 8 episodes this season are really kind of this season material.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you think of the whole story, there's so little of it that, it begins with, Trevor, Sypha, and Alucard deciding to go to the Belmont estate, right?
Yeah.
And it takes them 6 episodes to get out of the Belmont estate.
Yeah, they just kind of hang out there,
Yeah, and all they do there is find a book that tells them the secret, and Trevor finds the whip.
Well, there's Trevor finds the Morningstar whip,
right?
Which was cool. And
well, it's funny because once they traveled there and then stayed there for so long, they were too lazy to even travel to Dracula's castle. They brought Dracula's castle to them. They just barely moved at all.
Well, they brought Dracula's castle to them because how many more episodes would it take if they were to travel there?
It was just funny though, because it's they just didn't want to move.
Yeah.
Who wants to walk?
You would think a show about an RPG party having an adventure traveling to the Dracula's castle and then defeating him would be pretty cool, but these guys thought these Game of Thrones scheming and plot machinations with badass female vampire was better. And they didn't even give her the spot because she takes a backseat at the end of the show anyway, in the last few episodes.
Well, because
the season is kind of structured weird because it is like she is kind of like the center point of the first like 4 episodes, and then it shifts to like basically what we wanted in season 2 is like the next 3 episodes, and then the last episode is straight up shifted to like
it shifts
again,
back to her.
Yeah, it shifts back to her and kind of like the setup for next season,
which is like she's going to be the main villain for next season.
Well, she and Isaac, right?
Yeah, she and Isaac. Isaac is going to be well, I mean, it's next season it's obviously based on Curse of Darkness, which if you know, like, the story, which I wouldn't expect you, it was like a PlayStation 2 and Xbox, like, 3D Castlevania, and I know, like, those games aren't the most well-loved games in the series, so, like, but it takes place, like, several years after Castlevania 3, yes. Takes place several years after Castlevania 3, and the game features Hector as the main protagonist, and basically what he's trying to do is like Isaac is trying to resurrect Dracula, and Hector's trying to stop Isaac, and that's the game. There's no mention of Carmilla in the game, or as far as like what I read on Wikipedia.
Taking a twist on it then, because they also have Hector as basically Carmilla's slave now.
Yeah.
And Isaac resurrecting Dracula seems like the better of it seems like it's a better idea to bring back Dracula than to leave things to Carmilla right now.
Also, it makes sense for Isaac's character to try and, because Isaac is like so loyal to Dracula. Like, he is not just like one of Dracula's servants or, you know, or one of his lackeys. He is like,
he's a true believer.
Yeah, he's a true believer.
He's a Kool-Aid drinker.
Yeah, he's a Kool-Aid drinker. Yeah, he's a Kool-Aid drinker. Exactly.
It was funny in this first half of the season because we had a lot of it was kind of about Hector and Isaac and kind of the disparity of these two Devil Forge masters.
Right.
You know, Hector being this very kind of a gentle soul that like basically hated humanity from his past experiences and is kind of like naive and separates himself from his own actions and what they cause.
Yeah, the thing about Hector and Isaac is they both have like tragic pasts where they've been betrayed by the people around them.
They have to give them reasons to, you know, turn on their own race, basically.
Yeah. And so, you know, they're interesting characters. Hector more so because Hector is actually conflicted about like his place and his feelings and about whether or not he hates humanity, you know, but
he's
like
dumber than a shonen lead.
Yeah. Hector is conflicted, but Isaac is firmly like secure in his position and beliefs, you know.
Yeah. Isaac also doesn't separate himself from the kind of the dirtiness of what he does. Like Hector just kind of feels like to me it feels like he's like, oh, I'll raise monsters and then I'll let them out and that's all that happens. Nothing else happens. And Isaac's like, no, I'm raising monsters specifically to kill humans.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like Hector's kind of avoiding the blood on his hands, like, you know, where Isaac like embraces it. So it's kind of interesting disparity between these two people with basically the same ability. Two human characters, but both turning on their own race, both with this ability to create monsters for Dracula, but both have very different kind of mentalities. What was kind of uninteresting mostly about the first like couple episodes of the season is Dracula just basically sleeping on his throne.
Dracula is one of the most interesting villains because Dracula himself, he's basically like ready to die anyway. He's just destroying humanity in the world out of like revenge, out of anger and pain and anguish. Basically, he doesn't tell the vampires this, but he is killing everything and, you know, to the point where, you know, the vampires are going to starve and he doesn't care because they're going to die and Dracula doesn't care. In fact, Dracula knows like after he's done, he's just going to want to die.
That's why Alucard basically said to Dracula at one point that this whole thing is just one long suicide note.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, you see Dracula through the season, he's just mostly, like, moping in his throne, you know, like he's not really invested or involved. He's just like, as long as everything dies, peace. That's all they care about.
Isaac's like, some people might want to betray you. There might be this scheming going on. And Dracula's just like, yeah, what else?
I think Dracula is super interesting in general, not necessarily in this show. Like, as a character, he's interesting because he's so powerful. Supposedly, well, no, I mean, really, he is, he's got centuries of wisdom, behind him, knowledge and wisdom. He technically should be able to think above what a normal vampire and a normal human would think. And he had a good voice actor in this show as well. I'm kind of disappointed they did so little with him. Like, he kind of just moped around. And, they did a little bit with his relationship with Isaac. Like, that was sort of interesting to see him.
It was interesting to see him have a genuine relationship with, like, Isaac, where he basically admitted to Isaac that Isaac is the only one that he confides in, that he tells the truth to. He lies to everybody else, including Hector.
Having they show him once again having a relationship with a human being that he admires, in a sense, right?
Right.
To me, that's interesting. That makes the character more or less interesting, more interesting than the rest in the show. It does kind of suck that, yeah, sure, he got a lot of screen time, but not as much as I think he should have, being that, pretty much the whole show is about him and Trevor's party.
Yeah.
Right. Again, there wasn't much for the primary characters to do. It was like it was mostly like Hector, Isaac, and Carmilla, like the main actors.
Carmilla was just a huge distraction on the whole story. I mean, if you're setting up Curse of Darkness, and the original Curse of Darkness story doesn't even have Carmilla in it.
Yeah.
You can focus on Isaac and Hector and develop them as characters, which they sort of did.
Right.
You can focus on Dracula's new relationship with Isaac, like how, he learns to admire this other human being. And you can focus on your three protagonists who are trying to kill Dracula, and, who you're gonna have like a dynamic between them, rivalries, friendships, whatever. Like, you have a good structure for a plot there. And Carmilla just comes in and kind of takes the focus of the show for no reason. And
right.
Doesn't even end adding anything to the story, to like any of the other dynamics.
They were like, we need to Cersei up this season of Castlevania.
Yeah. And it's an actual distraction to, like, we need to throw in this character because people like Cersei, basically. People like Cersei, and we need a Cersei.
We need to Game of Thrones it up.
Yeah.
It was weird with Dracula, though, because in the first season, he seems so active in his role of revenge. Like, he raised the army, he was spouting off to the humans and telling them he wasn't like lackadaisical at that point, like he wasn't. And then just like this season kicks off and he's just like slouching in his throne the whole damn time.
But again, think about it. The only reason they made him this way this season was so that he could be a contrast to Carmilla, so that Carmilla could come in looking like a badass, natural born leader.
Oh, yeah. And,
this old man is standing in her way,
And Carmilla comes in, you're making a point that, all Dracula does is mope and that he's gone insane and that he's not a good leader. Like, that's her sales pitch, right? Dracula's not a good leader. He's just hiding in his throne room moping.
That's
and
funny.
He has these humans,
he's locked in his bedroom listening to Linkin Park.
Yeah.
So that's funny. That's going to be your story, right? But these guys is like, they're trying to do two separate stories in one take in 8 episodes and don't really develop either that much. So they end up being a distraction on one another while affecting, the actual characterization of Dracula.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it seems a little on the clumsy side. I see what you mean though about like using Dracula as being ineffective as a way to prop up Carmilla's goals. It also kind of serves to show how he doesn't see such an obvious coup coming, because he knows it's coming. Isaac doesn't care.
I don't. Yeah, it's not that he doesn't see it coming.
Yeah,
like he knows. He's not oblivious to what's going on. Like,
that's the thing though. If they were gonna make him like he was in the first season or in the second half of the second season, where he's like more actively involved, then the coup would be something he would have put down. So by making him just kind of not care and just in that state of depression, like, it makes it like believable that, like, such a coup could develop right under his nose.
But it's funny because Carmilla thinks she's clever.
Yeah.
And when really, like, she hasn't snuck anything past anybody except for Hector. You know, like at the end of the day, like Hector is like the one who's like fooled. You know, like
They
Dracula.
brought in Camilla to be a Cersei, but instead they made her a Sansa.
You know, Dracula and Isaac know what's going on. You know.
Yeah, the only one that's just completely fooled is Hector.
Yeah,
Hector the Gullible.
Yeah, Hector the Gullible. Yeah. Well, like you said, like Hector is a bit naive.
Yeah,
you know.
That's kind of. I don't think I liked Carmilla's character until the last episode when she was just beating the shit out of Hector for no reason.
Right, yeah. just because she at that point she got the better of him and she owned him, and so she just beat him just for the fuck of it.
Yeah, and that kind of like to me showed like more of a real character, which isn't so much scheming as it is just cruelty.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I ended up kind of like, okay, now I kind of have a better grasp of
And again, that was naivety because like Hector let himself get in that situation, right? Like you didn't think like Carmilla was like gonna like pull some shit. I don't know, why are you playing nice with her?
Yeah.
I kept thinking. And then he tries to leave and she pulls some shit and it's like, surprise. I'm like,
you know, they actually cut out a 2-episode arc where Hector bought like 7 timeshares. Yeah, this was so gullible. It was kind of like painful to watch, and then it was like cathartic to watch him get the shit kicked out of him. Even though I don't like Carmilla and I see her kind of as a villain, I'm not rooting for her. It was like, yeah, Hector, get some fucking sense knocked into you. Jesus.
You buy a whole box of Herbalife.
Meanwhile, Isaac's in the fucking desert, and these guys like ride up to him and try to like be like, you know, yo, fuck you, dude. Like Isaac like fucks them up and then raises them to be the beginning of like his army.
Yeah.
You know? He's got a fucking plan.
He's like building up his crusades or something.
Yeah, he's building up his crusades. He's going to get revenge, you know.
Let's talk a bit about Trevor, Alucard, and Sypha, and kind of their storyline, which, as you already mentioned, they ended up going to the Belmont Estate, to the hidden underground library, just this massive...
Well, that's their entire story, right? They go to the Belmont Estate, then they stay there until like the end of the series when they bring Dracula's castle to them, and then they storm it and fight Dracula.
It was that second half, though, that was so good. Like, I was kind of like hearing everybody going off about how good Castlevania was, and I watched the first 4 episodes like the week it came out, and then I just kind of hadn't watched it for a while, and I kept putting it off, and I'm like, I was just kind of not all that into it. And then everyone's talking about how great it is, and I'm just kind of like, are they just like excited by the fact that it's like a gory cartoon? Like, is it like that same kind of mentality of like, I remember when I first got into anime, and anime was like super rare.
Oh my God.
You couldn't find it. And one of the first things I got was Fist of the North Star.
Well, yeah, when I was like a young teenager, you know, back in the day, just discovering anime for the first time.
Yeah, it was like that, the stuff that was popular, the anime that were popular were all like the bloodiest.
It was, yeah, because it was like, it was something unique back then. Like, you know, like living in America back then, you didn't see like too many cartoons that were like, had serious like adult themes or adult storylines, you know, that had like blood, gore, and tits and swearing, you know.
It was all Vampire Hunter D, Fist of the North Star, Guyver. It was all like this gory kind of stuff, yeah. And
that was some radical shit. When you're like 14 years old, you know, that, you know, your testosterone is like, you know, just at its peak, you know, that shit like gets you excited.
I was just wondering, like, has anime just become such a thing, like where anime is just anime, that people just write that off, and then any other cartoon that happens to be violent ends up being like that same way that anime was for me when I was young, when I first discovered it. Like where it's like, oh my God, it's cartoons with heads exploding and shit.
That means it's gotta be deep and mature, right?
Yeah. I was like, is it like that same kind of like edgelord audience that's saying like Castlevania season 2 is so good because like, it's like, oh yeah, they're plotting like Game of Thrones, but it's not like good like Game of Thrones.
It's funny because when you get older, you look back and realize you only like that stuff when you were young because it was so edgy.
Yeah.
You know?
I still like anime a lot, but it's the things I liked about it are very different than the things I currently like about it. You know,
right, exactly.
That was just my edgelord phase of my, teenage years.
Yeah.
But like, it just makes me think, like, they're like, oh, there's scheming and there's characters getting killed and there's cursing, and like, is this why people are saying that season 2 was so amazing? What I think it comes down to is what was amazing about season 2 was episode 7. It was just the one episode, which was when they finally, when Trevor, Alucard and Sypha finally invaded Dracula's castle, and that went through to the end of the killing of Dracula. That was like one episode. So everything we were looking forward to in Castlevania season 2 from the end of Castlevania season 1 was all in a single episode.
Yep.
So I just kind of thought that was funny. And you know what? It was a great episode. It was really well animated. They were able to stick in some depth, like, Alucard's conversation with Dracula while they were fighting, and like all of that was like interesting and deep. It worked. I thought some of it was a little sudden, the way they did certain changes, like Dracula's sudden realization that he's beating up and trying to kill his son.
Right.
Was kind of like, well, yeah, duh.
Well, no, but like, I think you're being a little harsh there, because like, it's like, he's so blinded by rage and vengeance, and like, he doesn't, like he doesn't fully, in that moment, he doesn't fully realize what he's doing.
So what you're saying is I'm judging Dracula too severely.
Yeah, Dracula the benefit of the doubt, You don't know what he's been through.
Yeah, know what he's been through. But no, like, the point is, like, I'm not saying he's right. Like, I'm just saying, like, that's like his character, like it's not like he just realized, oh my god. No, it's like he just realized the severity of what he was doing in that moment.
It just felt like a real sudden, like, turn. Like it felt almost like it should have been, like, his resolve should have been weakening throughout the fight. And it seemed to kind of all happen on a turn of a dime, just like right on the spot at like one moment,
That was always kind of a gap, I guess, in the, in the original storyline, right? Like, why is Dracula completely able to kill his son? Like, to fight his son to the death, right? Alucard. It's understandable on the side of Alucard. He hates his dad because reasons? Are there any real reasons? They don't know. It's just
every cowboy has daddy issues.
Yeah. So I guess what they were just trying to do in this anime, it is an anime. In this anime was like, just address that, right? Like, oh, Dracula is too smart to think it's fine to kill his son. I completely agree with Tyson, though. It came out of nowhere and it felt forced in that episode. Like, that's what I'm saying. They could have been building up to that through the other 6 episodes before that one,
Yeah, right. They could have been planting cracks in his resolve.
Yeah, we did have 6 episodes with Dracula in them, that, could have had some of that in them, but no, they didn't have that at all.
So what did you guys think about after episode 7, the last episode of the season, episode 8, just being complete epilogue, the entire episode? It's like the conflict was completely over. It's like, I've seen it before, like where like the season finale like resolves the fight in the first like 15 minutes or something of like an hour-long episode.
Oh,
but this was just straight up like
that's
epilogue from the get-go.
That's common with like a lot of shows that do that. If I'm not mistaken, Game of Thrones does that a lot, where like they have like a big epic, the big epic thing that happens like the episode before the last episode.
Yeah, but they usually still have something going on in that last episode.
Right.
Like in Game of Thrones, there's usually like, because there's so many different stories in Game of Thrones. Like,
well, again, this wraps up. You call this an epilogue, but again, yeah. This is more set up for season 3. This is continuing the plot line from the beginning with Carmilla, Hector, and Isaac, and you gotta realize after Trevor, Sypha, and Alucard killed Dracula, the stuff with Carmilla and Hector and Isaac isn't resolved, so you have those hanging threads. You have to address that.
Yeah. I agree. It just kind of, it surprised me. It surprised me how everything ended in the 7th episode. Like, I was watching and I'm like, oh shit, they completely ended it. Like, that's there's still epilogue, there's still story to tell, but it kind of surprised me that, like I said, usually in a season finale, like where it's like an ongoing thing like this, where they have like a single big clash, like Game of Thrones is a different case because they'll have like 10 different storylines, each with like a big clash going on, you know? And so they'll put the biggest one as like the second to last episode, but they'll still have like big fights and big moves happen in the last episode. It's just that the climax is in the ninth one. But
right.
In other cases where it's more like only a few storylines, and like that's how it is with this, there's really only kind of two real storylines, one being the kind of the coup at Dracula's castle and the other being the attack on Dracula's castle. You know, like those are kind of like the only two real storylines going on. Usually when it's a story like that, they would maybe like end the penultimate episode of the season on like Alucard starting to face off with Dracula. And then that's where it kicks in the season finale. And you wrap up that fight rather quickly. And then you get into the epilogue stuff. But it was just kind of weird that like you could just kind of stop watching after the 7th episode and feel like, oh, that's the series finale or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
You could just watch episode 7 and not watch any of the other episodes.
Yeah, exactly. You could watch episode like the first season, then go right into 7.
Yep.
And you basically have like a continued storyline in that aspect. Which is another part of what's so weird, because it's like we had mentioned that this epilogue episode is all set up for season 3 and the story's moving forward, and so were the first 4 episodes. So it's all like 5 of the 8 episodes are set up for the next season.
Yeah, like most of this season was just half of season 3.
Yeah. It's like they need to like establish the other characters and other influences to make us care about what's going to happen on season 3 once Dracula's gone. And I can understand them wanting to do that, because if you kill off Dracula, then that's a lot of the motivation to move forward through the series. So you need to kind of establish other things. It's kind of surprising how much they put in, like how little they put in of Dracula's actual conflict, and how little they put in of Trevor and Alucard and Siffo's quest. That they just made that so brief that you could basically, like Alex said, you could just watch the 7th episode of the season, and that's pretty much everything you wanted. Like from beginning to end, including closure, of like where you left off from season 1. So I don't want this to sound like I didn't like it, because I did like it. I think
you were so negative.
I didn't like it a lot.
I enjoyed it. Overall, I enjoyed it. It was a bit slow at parts. I really wish, Trevor, Siffa, and Alucard had more to do. The part where, like, the monsters invaded the Belmont estate and Trevor got to actually, like, fight some monsters was pretty cool. The last battle with Dracula was awesome. You know, that was what you hoped it would be. You even got, like, to see Alucard turn into a wolf, which was cool.
Everything was ramped up. You could tell they also put the entire budget of that season into that episode too.
Yeah, you could tell.
Just the art was better, the animation was better, the direction was better. Like the angles on, like, it's weird to say, I'll say camera angles, because in live action that's what it would be. But like those were better. Like everything was framed better. You know, it was like at a much higher level than the rest of the season.
Mm-hmm.
I guess there isn't terribly much to talk about this season, because like I said, it's a lot of scheming and then like one episode of all the action we wanted. But where are we going moving forward here? Will, you'd mentioned the game that it seems to be everything hinting at, but it seems to be pushing characters in slightly different directions. Like it doesn't seem like
we don't know how it's
going to an adaptation.
We don't know how it's going to end up, but like Curse of Darkness, it's a PS2 game. It's set 3 years after Castlevania 3. So basically, it's about Hector. You know, Hector wants to settle down and have a normal life.
Right off the bat, there's like a huge disparity in positions between Hector in that game and Hector at the end of this season.
Hector's fiancée is accused of witchcraft and burned at the stake. And then Hector learns that her murder was ordered by Isaac. And so Hector seeks revenge on Isaac, and he chases him back to the abandoned Castlevania. Hector teams up with Trevor at some point. Trevor distrusts him for being a devil forge master.
A lot of the story sounds very close to actually what we got in the first season, the setup for Castlevania, with, you know, the wife being burned at the stake for witchcraft, all that kind of stuff. It's the exact same thing.
There's another character named Zed, who is a kindly holy man who provides Hector with information about where Isaac is. And then there's also Saint Germain, a time traveler. Apparently a big thing is like, Hector confronts Isaac, and then as Hector prepares to kill Isaac, Hector realizes that he's being controlled by Dracula's curse, and then the holy man Zed appears and confirms this and tells them that the Devil Forge Masters were meant to fight to the death, with Hector becoming the vessel for Dracula's reincarnation. And then Dracula's resurrected in Isaac's body, and then Hector proceeds to fight Dracula, who has taken full control over Isaac. Again, like, there is no mention of Carmilla. Carmilla is not involved in this at all.
Sounds like they're going to take a very different path.
Yeah.
Like they're going to maybe hit some of the same milestones.
Either that or Hector's going to escape from Carmilla and kill her pretty early, and then she's just not going to be a thing, right?
Escape her, kill her, settle down with a wife, even though he hates all the rest of humanity, and then immediately have his wife killed.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to be a really busy season.
Yeah, it's going to be a really busy season. I don't know how they're going to fit that into 8 30-minute episodes. But they can split up between 2 seasons again, right?
They're just going to double the seasons every year. So there was 8 episodes last season. There'll be 16 this season. Next season will be 32. And then Castlevania 64.
Oh, God. Castlevania 64. Jesus. That's not even worth making into like a season. I don't think that has a plot other than Belmont goes to kill Dracula.
I vaguely remember something about werewolves.
You think there's a werewolf too? Yes.
Yeah, that's in
the updated version, Curse of Dark or Legacy of Darkness. It was actually pretty decent. Like I liked it. It's a bit jank. Platforming's a bit jank. But yeah.
Will and I have talked about this.
I like those games, the 64 games, a lot better after I played the 360 ones.
Right. I never actually played the PlayStation 2 games, like Curse of Darkness and the other one, I think Lament of Innocence. Could be wrong. But I've never played those two. So I don't know how. I heard they weren't that great.
Yeah.
So Alex, Will and I have talked about it a lot before, and I want to get your opinion. Like, what do you want to see adapted, like in a future season of Castlevania? Because, for me, I think back on Castlevania, I'm not as big of a fan as Will as of the whole franchise, but I really want to see 2 things. I want to see Symphony of the Night, and I want to see Aria of Blood or Aria of Sorrow.
I'm not sure that there's that much missing from this, that isn't like Symphony of the Night. It's basically the same story, right?
Well, Symphony of the Night would explore Alucard more in depth.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the game doesn't. The game just goes into like, hey, your mom got burned at the stake, and your dad hates humanity, so you want to kill him.
The game goes more in depth into Alucard than any of the other games. Check there.
Yeah, but all of that was already covered by this show. That's what I'm saying. Like, there is no like deep lore about Alucard that we haven't seen in the show. Like, it's all been there and more.
I just kind of want to see something from Alucard's perspective, I think.
I just want to see more of Alucard. He's just fucking awesome. Yeah. Okay.
I think I had enough. I feel like that was good enough. If I was gonna say any storylines that would, that should be put on a show, honestly, none of, I don't think I ever thought any Castlevania story was deep enough, or like, all these characters are so cool that I need to know more about them, I always felt like it was good enough. Like, all the Belmonts are pretty faceless. Like, all they ever are is just the new protagonist.
Well, yeah.
They have as much character as, like, the new Link, usually.
Right.
Right. Actually, the new Link has more character than, like, all of the Belmonts.
They kind of like with Castlevania 3, like, they kind of tried to, like, give the games more of a narrative. Like, Castlevania, well, I guess Castlevania 2 started that direction, because Castlevania 2 does try to have more of a narrative than Castlevania 1. Castlevania 1, it's just, you're a vampire hunter and you're killing monsters.
Dracula.
Go kill Dracula.
So, what do you mean in Castlevania 2 there's more? Like, I feel like it's the same.
Well, it's the same general plot, but like, they start to like, they add like towns, they add like different, NPCs that you can talk to. And then, like, I feel like in Castlevania 3, they really tried to, like, give it more, because now they have Trevor, and he has a backstory, and that it's explained that he is an ancestor of Simon, so, so now this takes place in the past.
Right.
And then they introduce, like, these 3 characters, like, And again, it's not a lot. It's not like they went like super heavy into it, but it just adds a little bit more.
I think Arya Saro's got a bit of story to it.
It does. It's kind of anime. Actually, that's the one that I don't want made, just because it's so anime. I'm like, from that one. I would say, Portrait.
You should just do a prequel to Arya of Sorrow that's all about Soma, just like in high school.
No,
it's just a slice of life high school anime.
It's Konami.
I would say probably like the greatest Castlevania game, Rondo of Blood. Do that, Richter. I mean, there's a reason Sakurai chose Richter for the Echo Fighter instead of Trevor or any other Belmonts, right?
It's the other popular game. Like
it's the other popular game. Like Simon is like, he's the OG. Like he is the star of the first and the second games, and then like the 500 other games are a remake of the first game. Like Castlevania 4 isn't actually Castlevania 4; it's a remake of Castlevania 1 for Super Nintendo. Like
for the Nintendo.
Yeah.
That's because that's video games,
Yeah.
There's numbered sequels, but they're really just remakes.
Yeah, it's remake. So Simon's like iconic, but like if you're looking like outside of like Simon, like the other iconic would be Richter. Even though like I think Trevor's pretty iconic in his own right. Trevor's only been in one game.
So anyway, I think Portrait of Ruin could have some of this story put in there just because it has direct ties to, past storylines. Actually, you could do that whole storyline, the one between, the one in Sega, which was like Blood something.
Yeah. Bloodlines is interesting because Bloodlines attempted to connect the story of Castlevania with Bram Stoker's Dracula by introducing like a descendant of one of the characters in
Van Helsing, or
no, not Van Helsing, Quincy Morris, son of John Morris.
Right. So you could do that storyline of Bloodlines and also Portrait of Ruin, which is has direct ties to that.
Basically, Quincy Morris, who was a character in Bram Stoker's Dracula novel and who helped with killing Dracula in the novel. In Bloodlines, they explain that Quincy Morris is a distant relative of the Belmont family. And so they introduce his son John Morris as one of the primary vampire hunters in Bloodlines.
Yeah, if they want to do another strong female protagonist storyline, they could definitely do Order of Ecclesia.
Yeah, Order of Ecclesia, yeah. Or they could even do Sonia Belmont.
Yeah, but then you're just doing, the same storyline again. It's just, and cause it is. That's what I'm saying though. They're all the same storyline, so I just don't know what
But the interesting thing about Sonia Belmont is like,
Dracula.
The interesting thing about Sonia Belmont is she was introduced in the Game Boy game Castlevania Legends, and she was introduced as the first Belmont vampire hunter, and then Koji Igarashi actually like retconned her out of continuity.
Yeah.
And when they asked,
and then Kojima retconned him out of continuity as well.
Yeah. Yeah, Igarashi like retconned her out of continuity, and then when like they asked Igarashi in an interview about it, he just like replied with, I don't think women can be action heroes. Like that was just stupid to me. So
that's very like Japanese. It's very kind of like
I was like,
they're not in the same kind of progressive environment that we're in right now, so they don't have like that sensibility in place.
Right.
That brings our discussion to a close. Now I'm just going to kind of talk about what's coming up in the weeks ahead. Starting on Friday, December 21st, 2018, Marvel's Runaways returns to Hulu. Vanity Fair, the miniseries, comes to Amazon. Diablero comes to Netflix. And Tales of Arcadia 3 Below comes to Netflix. That is, because it's Tales of Arcadia, it's the same universe as Troll Hunters. It's also from Guillermo del Toro, as Troll Hunters was. Dairy Girls comes to Netflix. Last Hope to Netflix. Perfume to Netflix. Sirius the Jaeger to Netflix. And a miniseries called Wolf comes to Netflix. So if you have Netflix, this next Friday is going to be a big one for you. Then on Saturday, December 22nd, 2018, Demon's Path comes to Netflix. Sunday, December 23rd, 2018, Watership Down comes to Netflix. Alex, did you watch Watership Down at all? The original?
I haven't.
It's just basically about these rabbits that are trying to like, they go on like this adventure and it's just bloody and horrifying. And it's like, it's one of those things that they show children and then the children are scarred for life.
Yeah, I heard it was a really, really great animated movie, actually.
Yeah, so they're doing like a new mini-series of that on Netflix.
Okay, yeah, it might be worth checking out. I mean, I need to watch the original movie anyway, so I might as well.
Yeah. Then on Monday, December 24th, Christmas Eve, 2018, High Score Girl comes to Netflix. That's an anime. On Tuesday, December 25th, 2018, Call the Midwife has a Christmas special on PBS, and When Calls the Heart has a Christmas special on Hallmark. On Friday, December 28th, 2018, Selection Day hits Netflix. On Sunday, December 30th, 2018, The Orville comes to Fox. That's basically a love letter to Star Trek The Next Generation. And on Tuesday, January 1st, 2019, A Series of Unfortunate Events returns to Netflix. Wednesday, January 2nd, 2019, Grownish to Freeform. And Thursday, January 3rd, 2019, The Blacklist comes back to NBC and Gotham returns on Fox. It's to conclude its final season. Then Friday, January 4th, 2019, Young Justice Outsiders debuts on DC Universe. May finally actually be a reason to actually get DC Universe for a month or two. And Call My Agent comes to Netflix. So Will and I always marvel when we do these things of just how like half of the shows coming up always seem to be on Netflix now.
Oh yeah.
It's just kind of crazy. It's like half of it's Netflix and half is everything else combined.
What about Roma? Are you guys going to watch and review that?
The movie?
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to. We're going to kind of stay focused on TV. Do you want to do anything for that?
I might. I haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
It might be worth doing. I mean, it's technically Netflix stuff, so.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's on the service right now, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think I saw an ad for it. So yeah, if you want to do something for the site for that, then go right ahead. I'll be happy to have it.
Cool.
Yep, definitely.
So, but yeah, that's it for the podcast. No podcast next week. When we come back in 2 weeks from the time this airs, we're actually recording this a little early, so it sounds a little weird, but in the first week of January when we come back, we're going to be talking about the best shows and, best performers and all that kind of stuff in TV, from 2018. So we're just kind of talk about what we thought was the best stuff on TV in the year. Until then, you can reach me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can reach Will. He is at FuckTheHero. You can check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel as well as our site, thetotalscreen.com. You can subscribe to the podcast through any major podcast client like iTunes or Pocket Cast, and the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel. Lastly, I want to give a plug to Alex's site, which is gamewitness.com, right?
That's right. Yep.
So what can we find at gamewitness.com?
Random articles about how cool video games are.
Awesome.
No, but specifically the good part of it is a link to the Discord community, which is filled with a lot of other mature, somewhat adult gamers.
I can
get together and play games.
I can vouch for that. Definitely join the Game Witness Discord community. I'm a member. Tyson is a member. It's a really fun place. They do gaming nights every Tuesday. Really cool.
Yeah, it's gotta tell you up front, it's mostly Nintendo focused stuff.
Yeah.
That's why we need more multi-platform people in there.
Yeah. We get more people in there who can diversify a bit.
It's mostly Nintendo. Like, I can do PlayStation and Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
I do Xbox.
You braggart.
There's nothing on Xbox that's interesting.
But thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
If you would like to reach out to us and make a comment, send an email to contact@thetotalscreen.com. Stay tuned to The Total Screen for the very best